I remember I took the test, and I ran out into the living room, and I was so excited because it was like a piece of hope for me. I'd always wanted to be a mom, and yeah, I was so excited.
You thought you found some purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but at the same time, I was really scared.
Yeah.
Hi, and welcome to Miracles from the Hill podcast, where we share raw stories that display the anatomy of God's grace here at Miracle Hill Ministries. If this is your first time joining us, please subscribe. And of course, you can like, comment, and leave a review. To connect with us, visit our website linked in the description box. And now, here is our host, Ryan Dirk.
Greetings, listeners, and welcome back to the Miracles from the Hill podcast. I'm Ryan. We are excited that you're here. If you're new, thank you for joining us. You're going to be blessed by today's episode. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. As always, follow, leave a review, tell us what you think. Reach out to us at podcast at miraclehill.org. We're deep into the depths of season 3 of our podcast, which is all about the very real experience of homelessness for children. And we are blessed today to have Gina with us. Good morning, Gina.
Good morning.
Good morning. So what is an interesting fact about you that maybe nobody would know? I don't know.
Okay, an interesting fact about me. Okay, so my last name is Bois. And
it's French.
It's French,
Bois.
yeah. And so most people are like pronounce it like boys, but
yeah,
it's
that's
actually
what I was
Bois.
going to say. I'm glad I did.
Yeah, it's actually Bois, and it means wood.
Wood.
Yeah, it means
Gina Wood.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to give away any of Gina's story by giving a background. So we are just going to jump into this amazing story of God's grace in Gina's life and see where we land. So Gina, tell us a little bit what life was like growing up.
Okay, so I was born in Pasadena, California, and I was raised in Simi Valley, which is a small town right outside of the San Fernando Valley. And my parents divorced when I was 3 years old. And I was raised by my mom. She was a single mom, and I do have a brother and a sister that were older than me. When my parents divorced, it came out that I was molested by my brother. And so my brother went to go live with my dad, and I went to live with my mom. So my sister was older. She went off to college, and I was basically raised by my mom. My mom struggled with manic depressive disorder. She was an alcoholic, but she tried her best as I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
She was loving. She was caring. And as I was growing up, you know, I had a large family on my mom's side.
Mm-hmm.
I had aunts, uncles, and my grandma was a Catholic. So I went to like CCD when I was little.
What's that stand for?
It's like when you get your first Holy Communion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like you go to school.
Confirmation.
And confirmation. Yeah.
There we go.
So you know, I'd known a little bit about about God, but I always pictured him as this God who was like judging you up from the sky, and you had to live a certain way. But my home life was so chaotic. And so, so growing up, I had a hard time, but I was got through school. I was bullied here and there. But by the time while I was, a teenager, I fell into drinking and things like that as well. And then, so I went to college. I went to college and
Still in California.
Still in California. I went to college and I found that I really love child development. So I went and I got a degree in early childhood education, and I found a large support network out there, and I became like a preschool teacher, which I really love doing that. And my first job I ever had in California was working at a movie theater as a teenager. So I learned at an early age, how to I had to fend for myself. My mom was, I always had to care for my mom. I always say, like, my mom hadn't, like, vacuumed in, like, 15 years, Like, I learned how to, from early age as a kid, how to cook for myself, different things like that, because my mom did have a lot of struggles, so I was raised by her, but I had to learn early how to kind of carry the weight.
Sure.
And so it was like I had this accomplishment of like going to college, just like I was like kind of checking off the boxes, like I wanted to make something of myself, but on the outside I was having these accomplishments, but on the inside I was struggling with at home with alcohol. So at an early age, I think I started drinking when I was like 13 years old. And I would drink with my mom. And so by the time I was 18 years old, I was an alcoholic.
Sure.
And that was always normal to me. So yeah, that's kind of my early.
Yeah. So you're partying in California. How does the Lord kind of move you over from coast to coast?
Right. So I was graduating college, and I have an aunt that lives out here that moved out here now it's been like 12 years since she's been out here. But so I was sitting outside having lunch one day at school, and she said to me, she's like, why don't you come move out here? Like, I have a free room for you in my apartment. Like, you can come stay with me. And I was like, you're crazy. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to leave my mom, move across country, because I'd been such a caregiver for her all my life. And so God just started to work on my heart, and I just started to kind of come up with a plan of how I'd make that happen to come out here. And God was like, just go. Like, so I sat down with my mom one day in the kitchen, and I was like, Mom, I'm going to move to South Carolina with Aunt Teresa. And she was like, you can't leave me. Like, you can't leave me here like this. She's like, I can't take care of myself. Like, she's like, you can't leave me. And I was like, yes, Mom, but she's like, but I was like, but I have to. Like, I need to do something for me to, like, spread my wings, like, Yeah. And so I just had this, like, firm confirmation from God, like, just go, just trust me, and I'll make the rest, happen. So I graduated college and put my car on a truck and took a plane, and I moved out here. I had, like, 3 boxes of stuff and a couple suitcases, and I made the move out here. And so the thing was, from the difference from when I was out there is, I had, my whole life of friends and everything out there that I had known, and a lot of my friends, obviously, I would drink with, and, like, just, my family out there. And so I had, like, kind of a group of people that I had spent my time with in California. But here, when I moved here, I didn't know anyone.
You're isolated. Yeah.
So it's like I thought when I moved here that I could leave, that I definitely had in my mind, okay, well, I'll move to South Carolina and change my life, and I can just stop drinking. Like, I can just basically reinvent myself, start over. And
the old geographical shift.
Yeah.
Everything will be different if I'm somewhere else.
Yeah, you take you with you, though, is something that I definitely learned. Like, no matter where you go, you take you with you. There you are. Here I am. And so, I quickly learned that when I came here, there was my old friend, the bottle, and I was alone. And so quickly that started to spiral out of control, too.
So you get out here and you don't really stabilize. You just go straight into drinking more.
No, I definitely no. When I came out here, I did stabilize. So I got a job. I got a great teaching job, and so I got a great job. And the thing is like, it wasn't like I was like, I drink all day long and I'm like, I can't function. I was very much so a functioning alcoholic. Like, I would go to work, do what I had to do, and then come home, drink, wake up the next morning, do what I have to do. Like, it's not like I'm like drinking on the job, and like very much so functioning alcohol. And that's kind of the problem with alcohol, is that it's illegal. It's illegal. And so you can go to the store and buy it. Like, it's like one of those I feel like it's
it's socially accepted.
Yeah. And so like for me, it was like I couldn't, like, I grew up with it. So it was like I couldn't see that I had this problem. Like, it was like I couldn't accept it yet. So I came here, and so I got this great job, and yeah, so I did stabilize, but it wasn't until I was living with my aunt, and she had taken me to church, because when you're in the South, apparently that's what you do. On Sunday, you like take people to church.
Everybody.
Not everybody.
A lot of people do.
So she's like, I'm taking you to church. So she takes me to church, and then like
Was that the first time you've been to like a Protestant church?
Well, it was a Christian church. It's just like a Christian church, best way you could say it, where, full worship, message, and everything. But I like met this Jesus that was loving and wanted a relationship with you. And I was like, I never experienced that before ever in my life. And so I was like, okay, like there's something else out there that does, like, this Jesus wants to know me, but I wasn't ready to let go of my sin. And so definitely God started to work on my heart there. And so that's when my aunt confronted me, and she was like, look, Gina, you have a problem. And if you continue to do this, like, you can't live in my house anymore. Like, I'm not going to accept this. And immediately I was obviously defensive. But I did start to seek out to go to different things. Like, so I started to go to Favor. I got a recovery coach, started to go to Celebrate Recovery, because I wanted to stop, but I wasn't really ready to completely cut it out. And I would have little bouts of sobriety. Like, I would stop drinking for a week, 3 weeks, but then I would go back. And it was just like kind of this constant like yo-yo spiral effect. And then it wasn't until I finally met, I was at an AA meeting one night. So I'd lived out here at this point. I was here for about 1.5 years.
Okay.
And I went to an AA meeting, and that's when I met Joe, my now separated husband. Okay. So at this time I had about, I think I had been about 2 months clean from drinking. So I was on a good run of sobriety at that point, and so,
So you meet Joe, and he's sober at the time.
Yes.
And so you guys, instead of finding your purpose in Jesus, you kind of find your purpose in each other.
Yes.
And so how does that progress?
Right. So obviously I have my support network who's telling me, you need to wait. You need to wait in your recovery. Wait till 1 year. Till
lots
you
of wisdom.
Lots of wisdom.
Lots of wisdom.
Yeah, I had, a lot of people telling me, wait till you have 1 year clean to jump in a relationship. But I was like, I'm lonely, I was looking for love in the wrong places. Like, I knew Jesus loved me, and I knew about I knew about that, but I wanted to find it in something else, and so it was like when we linked up, it was like, and so, so I'm trying to think back to your question.
Well, so do you guys start drinking together?
Well, not right away. So, I mean, we kind of we fall in love, obviously, is what I what best way I could say it, like we start dating, and we start doing all those like fun things sober together. I mean, we went to amusement parks, went on dates, basically did the entire list of things that you could do as a sober couple. Like
Right.
we exhaust every single thing for the next probably 6 months that you could possibly
So you
do.
get a big chunk of clean time.
Yeah, we get a big chunk of clean time together where we're like, you know, doing all the fun things, having a great time, and just, you know, really getting to know each other. And then one day, and something we would always do is we would go and have lunch together on our lunch break, because he was working. He was living at a sober living house and working, and I was working. He picked me up on my lunch break, and he was drunk. And I was like, what are you doing? You know? And within 10 minutes, we were at the liquor store buying a bottle, and we both got drunk. And then within 20 minutes of that, or however long it was, I mean, it's all a blur to me. We were on the highway and got in a drunk driving accident.
Wow.
Yeah. So this event, and not to mention that this event happening was 3 days before I was supposed to give my testimony at CR, because I had just completed a step study.
Wow.
So it was like the enemy just slithered right on in, like right there, at a point where was about to have a breakthrough. And so I always look back at that, and it's like, you know, so like not like a lot of regret, but I think back to that and I'm like, where would have life been, you know?
Yeah, but Gina, regret and remorse serve no purpose
Right.
other than to teach us what to do different.
Right,
You know?
right.
So
True.
so you have this accident which upends what you're doing.
Right, completely.
And how do things progress from there?
Right. So from there, so another thing is that, like, at this point, I had never tried any type of hard drugs. But Joe, he was in recovery for drug addiction. And so I hadn't really understood the magnitude of where his drug addiction was. I mean,
Right.
I hadn't experienced that with him. And so within a week of this accident, within a week of this accident, I'll just say it cut and dry, I was introduced to methamphetamine. And from there, things basically just spiraled out of control.
So you lose your job,
Yep.
lose your place to
Yeah.
stay.
Well, so it was on a weekend. And so initially when it was presented to me, I was like, I'm not going to do this. Like, I'm like, I do not want that. And it was like, I was overweight at the time. And I mean, he's like, it'll make you skinny. I mean, you'll have more energy. And I was like, and it was like one thing led to another. And I was on it. And it was on a weekend. It was on a Friday. And then Monday morning I had work. And I remember I was sitting in the parking lot with him at work in the car. And I was like, I cannot go in there. I can't go in there. Like, because keep in mind, I was a teacher.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't go in there. And I was sitting in the parking lot at work, and we just drove away. And I never went back. I never called. Wow. And that was so out of character for me. Because I was always on time, early, there, you know, preparing, you know, and it was like, so that was where that shame really hit me. And so I didn't lose my apartment right away. Thank you. I didn't lose my apartment right away because at that time I had savings. I had, you know, everything was still.
All the good things that happen when you live sober.
When you live sober, we're still there. But I had just lost my car. So I had like a rent-a-car for a little while. And so after that, I bought like a clunk of junk that lasted for a little while with the little bit of savings I had. And so we had this used car, and my apartment we moved out of.
So he got kicked out of the sober living, clearly.
Yes.
And so he moved into the apartment.
Yeah, he moved in with me. So we were living together. We got married.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're like,
Justice
let's get married. Huh?
Go to the justice of the peace.
What does that mean?
Did you go to the courthouse?
Oh, yeah. We went
Yeah.
to the courthouse. So
Yeah.
we're like, let's get married because, we're ride or die.
Okay. So you get married.
Yeah.
You've no call, no showed your job.
Yes.
He's not working, it doesn't sound like.
No, not anymore.
And so you're just sucking down the savings.
Yeah. And then COVID hits. I had started another job somehow. I think it was like, so we moved into this trailer that was like off of White Horse Road, and it was right across from Family Dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And I started a job at Family Dollar, so I was working there. COVID hits. I somehow get on unemployment, and so that was great when I was on drugs, getting a free check, which was also
plus the COVID bonus.
Yeah, but that also was very, what's the word? How do I say, like, I don't know the word I'm trying to say. Like, it was
feeding
it. Yeah. But so at this time, so the accident was in September. COVID hits. I found out, so we move, COVID hits, and so COVID hit in like March.
Mm-hmm.
And right after that, I found out I was pregnant.
So what are you thinking when you find out you're pregnant? How are you feeling?
So, I remember I took the test, and I ran out into the living room, and I was so excited because it was like a piece of hope for me. I'd always wanted to be a mom, and yeah, I was so excited.
You thought you would find some purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but at the same time, I was really scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you going to provide for this child, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. And
what was Joe's response?
He was excited too. But I also think that he was very scared. We both just were like shocked. We didn't think it could happen. That was another thing that he told me, that he didn't think he could have kids.
It's a super convenient thing to say to a girl that you're dating.
Yeah. So, that he did tell me that he didn't think that he could have kids. And so I was just like, I was shocked, And so there I was addicted to meth and was pregnant.
Yeah.
And so at that time I was like, okay, we're living in this 1-bedroom trailer. Like, this isn't going to work for a baby. I got on Medicaid, and we moved into this really nice 3-bedroom house up the street that we managed to make happen. And so we moved in this house, and I remember when we were driving up the driveway, it was like my dream house because it had a beautiful yard and nice room for Daisy. Her name ended up being Daisy.
Mm-hmm. Spoiler
alert. And so it was a beautiful house, and the landlord sat in the kitchen with us, and he was like, he had seen on Joe's ID that the address on there was the address for the recovery house. And so when he met us, he was like, you guys are in recovery. And he had hope in us. Like, he was like, you guys are a young couple in recovery. Like, I'm going to give y'all a chance. If you move in this house, just keep your word. Like, you're pregnant, going to have this baby, going to be a family house. And so I remember we were driving up the driveway to the house, and I was like, Joe, we're not going to use drugs in this house, And we got in the house, and it was like our first night there, and like within 8 hours there we were getting high in the house.
Yeah. So what was the pregnancy like? I mean, you're using, you're unsupported.
Right. So the pregnancy was very lonely. I basically hid from my entire family and any friends what was going on, and had basically like how do you say, like a
facade.
facade
Yeah.
that like everything was okay. Like nobody knew what was going on in my life. That I had this chaotic entire like second life going on.
Yeah.
To the world, they saw that I was pregnant with a baby girl, and you know that we had a beautiful nursery and I had a baby shower. But on the inside, I couldn't stop using.
Yeah.
And it's really scary.
And so you guys are nobody knows what's going on. But you're working. How are you supporting the house, making the nursery, all that stuff?
I still had that unemployment going on because of COVID. And so that's how we were supporting the house. And so basically, at this point in the addiction, I mean, you have to keep in mind that addiction is kind of like a downward spiral, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, and I don't know if it's only particularly for meth, but it's like everything was still okay. Like we had a house, we had a car, we still had money in the bank. Like we were still able to function. And I had this, like, I was living in kind of a like, okay, I'll just stop. I can stop. I can stop this. Like, but as months like progressed and went on, it was like, it became more of a reality. Like, I can't stop. Like, and I'd go like 3 days and then I'd be sick in the bed and it'd be like, I couldn't get up unless I did some. And it'd be like, all of a sudden now I'm 6 months pregnant. Now I'm 7 months pregnant and I need just a little bit to like get up and do something around the house. And it wasn't like I was walking the streets and like copping dope or whatever it was. It was like I was more of just sitting at home and like just like stuck inside the house and like, you know, and a lot of it was I felt like my partner was a big part of it. Like I take personal responsibility, but I feel like my partner was a big part of it, that he would go out and get it and then I would be there. And he wasn't ready to stop either. Yeah. And so that was hard for me because he would sit there and judge me and be like, well, you know, you're a piece of shit and you need to stop, but you're sitting in front of me doing it too.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where there I was, and I was going to prenatal appointments for her. So I knew that she was a girl. I went to my anatomy screening and everything, and I knew that she was healthy. But because of this COVID, they weren't screening me like they should have. I never got drug tested or anything. So I felt like, I mean, in my addiction, I was like, okay, well, I'm just sliding through the cracks. Yeah. I'm not going to get drug tested. Like, I'm going to be able to take her home.
I don't know that they do that generally unless they have a reason to do that.
Right.
I don't remember that in either of, you know, my wife's pregnancies. So they probably just didn't suspect that anything was going on.
Right. And I played a good facade. And so I was just trying to convince myself the entire time that I was going to be able to bring her home, you know?
So what changed?
So what changed was that I went to go have her. I went into labor and I went to go have her, and I was 12 hours into my labor, and the nurse comes in and she's like, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and administer a drug screen. And I was like, at that point, the day I had her, I hadn't done anything in like 5 days. So I was like, okay, because I had been trying to stop my entire pregnancy, and I was very pregnant. And I was like, at the end there, I was like, okay, I just need to, here I'm at the end. Like, if I just am clean the day she's born, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then, so I was like, okay, ma'am, you can do a drug test. That's fine. Whatever you need to do. And, she admitted, and I'm in full blown labor. Yeah. Like, and so I'm like, do whatever you need to do. Like, and so they administered the drug test and I was positive.
For
meth.
Yeah. Okay. So, that changes things.
Oh yeah.
So what happened? I mean, clearly you have her.
Yeah. I have Daisy, and she's the most beautiful little girl. She was perfect, healthy, and yeah. And so there I am with my baby in the hospital, and I do not want to let her go. I mean, I'm just, yeah.
So did DSS come in at that time while you're in the hospital?
Mm-hmm.
And so what did they say?
So when DSS came into the hospital, basically they wanted to just talk to me, find out what was going on, and I begged them. I was like, please come and see our house, like come and see that like we're prepared for this baby and that, you know, I have everything I need for her. And they agreed to come do a house visit, and they came to the house the next day and came and saw the house, and they made Joe the in-home protector for her. And they kind of messed up because they didn't drug test Joe before sending her home.
Mm-hmm.
And so they released Daisy to us, and we went to go take our drug screens. And at that point, we go and we take our drug screens, and I was negative because I hadn't done anything at that point. Now it's been like 10 days. I was clean, and I was fighting to stay clean at that point because they're having my baby, and I'm like, I have DSS in the picture, and I'm like, I was like, I'm not going to touch a thing again in my life, and here I have my baby. And then we walk into the drug screen place, and Joe was obviously positive. And within a week and a half of them getting those results back, they came and got Daisy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So your world crashed in on you.
Yes.
So how do you and Joe respond to that?
Well, I know I can speak for myself that that my world completely changed. I just completely lost it. When you have a child and you have, you know, obviously a newborn baby, like that was like the most soul crushing thing for me to experience.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah. And so like my baby was gone, and so when they came to get her, I had to like pack up as much stuff as I could for her in like 5 minutes, and the caseworker stood there with me. And I used to have keep in mind that all through my addiction, I still had that Jesus that I met in that church that day, you know, in my heart. And I had a cross on my wall, and I had, you know, my books up on my banister, and just different things around my house that were up in my house that like I still kept the things that I loved around my house, like my beautiful things that I like to keep up. And the caseworker was looking around my house, and she was like, Gina, DSS doesn't see what I see. Like, she could see that I loved my child, but she knew I needed help, you know? Like, she was like, DSS doesn't see that. Like, they only see a positive drug screen. Like, she was like, you need to fight for your child. And it was like, she was sitting there saying this to me, and it was like all I could see that Daisy was gone. Like, so it was like I kind of just had this like tunnel vision. And so from there it was like this shame hit me. They took me to jail. I was arrested for child neglect because in the state of South Carolina, testing positive at birth is illegal. And so I was arrested for child neglect. I went to jail. And
Okay. So Daisy's gone.
Mm-hmm.
How do you and Joe react with your recovery? Do you just dig deeper because of your shame and your wounds? Or do you try to hold some sobriety?
So truthfully, it was really hard to hold any type of sobriety at that point. I could say that I tried, but it was really hard to stay clean.
Yeah. So, we've talked about this many times on this podcast. So with addiction, you've got kind of two different mechanisms happening at the same time. You've got the physical addiction side of things, right?
Yeah.
Like your body actually craving something.
Yeah.
And then you've got the psychological aspect. And so when you're filled with shame and regret and guilt and remorse, and every moment you wake up, you feel terrible, but that all you got to do is whatever, and it'll go away for a minute.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes it very, very challenging to find, especially it makes it impossible to do on your own.
Yeah.
Essentially. Okay. So what is DSS telling you? What kind of support did you get from them? I mean, you got this caseworker saying she sees that you have potential.
Right. So we were basically told we had to do outpatient, Phoenix Center, and parenting classes. And well, right away, like when Daisy was taken away, I was like, I want to do this now. Because I was motivated right when she was taken away. But they couldn't get me in right away. So it was like going to take 3 weeks for this, 6 weeks till the parenting class started. So when I was getting these time frames, I was like, I need something now.
Yeah.
And so I was getting very discouraged.
Yeah.
And so I basically was taking that as an excuse to use.
Right. Because you don't have to be sober for 3 weeks.
Right. And so and then every time a drug screen would come up, that would like put the fear of life in me, and I wouldn't show up to the drug screen.
Yeah.
And so, but something that DSS did give me that did end up helping was a support group. It was called Moms Matter, and it was a support group for moms with their children in foster care. And so I did find some support in there. So I got to meet some other moms that were in the same situation as me, and so we would just meet on Zoom. And we would kind of talk about our case and where we were at. And so that was super helpful. And so I found some other moms, which I'm still friends with today, that walked along with me.
Were they keeping you abreast of where Daisy was and what was happening?
So since Daisy was obviously a 3-week-old infant, I was able to have, and I fought for this, I was able to have 1 hour a week visits with her at the DSS office.
Okay.
And then I also was able to set up emails with the foster parents where they would send me pictures of her because, she was only 3 weeks old.
Right.
So basically, I would have my 1 hour with her, and then those 1 hour visits just basically progressed for months and months and months and months. And I would get a weekly email from the foster parents, and we would go back and forth on email, and we really grew to know each other through those emails, which I'm so thankful for, because in a really dark time in my life, like it was like on Saturday nights, I would get this email with pictures of my daughter and like of how she was doing, and it was like, it would bring me joy and like happiness to see her, but it also would like make me so sad at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the purpose of this episode is not to get into the brokenness in the system, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like it's noteworthy to point out that the moment DSS said that you needed to do outpatient and parenting classes, the time that it took to do that was a missed opportunity, right? Like that's noteworthy.
Yes.
There was a moment, you have a moment of clarity, which is important from a recovery perspective, but you've got, at least from the DSS's perspective, you've got no ability to act on it. I mean, certainly you could have done something different,
right,
but at least for those two things. And then I'm sure there's really good reasons for 1 hour a week.
Yeah. And there's also to note that I had gone to the caseworker multiple times over the span of, over that time. And I was like, is there any other options other than this Phoenix Center. Like, I need something. Like, asking for different options. They're like, no, this is the only one. This is the only one. So they give you a very like this, they
narrow path.
Narrow path of like, these are the only approved options. You don't have anything else. You have to do this. So it's like these parents that are in this situation, it makes it really hard for them to get the help that they need.
So I'm going to make a statement that skips all the way to the end, and we'll come back. So, I mean, recovery is all about us, right? Mm-hmm. Like at the end of the day, you know, you can say there's physical and you can say there's psychological, but we make the choice to use, right? And we have to make the choice to stop using. Yes. So I don't want to ever try to blame our addiction on anybody else. At the end of the day, Gina used because Gina wanted to use, right? Yeah. Didn't see any other path. But man, what an opportunity we have to fix something there, right? Like where it could be different for the next mom that, you know, has this moment of clarity on behalf of the state. Okay, so you're communicating with Heather by picture, by emails. How does life change just a few months later?
So within a few months of that, I found out I was pregnant again with another baby. So Daisy and Grace, so my second child, they are 11 months apart. So you can do the math. So within 3 months of Daisy getting, you know, into foster care, I got pregnant again. And so there I was now in a deeper part of my addiction and pregnant again. Yeah.
So, and does DSS know this right off the bat?
No.
So you hide it from them?
Yes, for as long as I possibly could, because I was very scared. Because I knew what was going to happen. I knew that they would take the baby, and I knew that unless I came up with a plan of how I was going to get clean, that they would certainly take the baby. So
you are not following through on their recommendations? So you're not doing what they're asking you to do. You're not showing up to the drug screens, and now you've gotten pregnant again and you're still using. And when does DSS figure it out?
Well, I think that my caseworker kind of had an idea that I was, and she had confronted me about it, and I wasn't ready to tell her when she confronted me. And I lied and said that I wasn't. And then within about 2 months of that, we had a court hearing, and it basically came down to that they gave me a 6-month extension on the current plan that was concurrent with termination of parental rights for Daisy. So they basically came forward and said, we'll give you 6 more months to do what you have to do for Daisy, but it's concurrent with termination of parental rights. So I knew right then and there that I had 6 months to get my act together, or I was going to lose Daisy. And within 1 week of that court hearing, I called my caseworker and told her I was pregnant. But I didn't call her and tell her I was pregnant until I had called Serenity Place.
Okay, now how did you find out about Serenity Place?
So I had found out about Serenity Place through that group from Moms Matter, actually. There was a couple other moms that had went to that program, and they had told me about it. And so I had to call Serenity Place and talk to them. There's no one else that could have called for me or anything like that. You have to be the one to call. And so I remember when I called and I talked to the girl on the phone, and I said, I think it's too late. You know, I think it's too late, like, for my kids and for me. And she's like, honey, it's never too late, you know? And so the thing about Serenity Place is that you either have to have a child to go with you under the age of 4, or you have to be pregnant. So I knew that DSS probably wasn't going to let me have Daisy come with me, that was out of the picture at this point. But I knew that I could go because I was pregnant with Grace.
Right.
And so I called, and that was the first time since my addiction started that I was completely honest with someone. And they accepted me. And I told them about how, I was on the needle. I was losing everything. We were getting evicted from our house. I had nowhere to go, and just that I needed help. And so they set a date for me to basically come. And so I started packing my stuff. And so it wasn't until I had that set up that I told my caseworker, because I didn't want to go to her and tell her, hey, I'm pregnant, until I told her that I had a plan of what I wanted to do.
Right. And what's Joe's response to this?
So Joe, at this point, he had gone completely AWOL, and he had left me at that point. He had took our car and went back to his hometown in Charleston. So at this point, I was alone at the house, which at the time I was really upset about. But I look back, and it was kind of a blessing.
Yeah.
Because he had gotten really abusive at that point, and our relationship had just completely fallen apart. And so at this point, it was kind of a blessing that I was able to have the time alone to pack up and be able to move. And so when I told him I was going to Serenity Place, he was a bit upset. But he told me that, I needed to go.
Yeah.
So he did come back one more time. Like, it was like 2 days before I left, and it was actually almost made it that I didn't go when he showed back up, because he was telling me, come with me. You can just come with me. And I was like, God was telling me that's a firm no, because I wasn't about to go have that baby somewhere, like at this point, like this child, that baby was giving me hope. I didn't know if Grace was a boy or girl. I had absolutely no prenatal care. And I knew that I just needed to get to Serenity Place,
So you call DSS, you say, I'm pregnant.
Yes.
I'm going to Serenity Place. What's their response?
Basically, good luck. We'll believe it when we see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do go.
Yes.
Talk us through getting there and Grace's birth.
Yeah. So I basically pack up what I've got left, and they come and get me. So I didn't have a car, so Serenity Place came and got me. And I show up, and I had an appointment for prenatal care on Monday. I got there on a Wednesday, and Grace was born on Saturday. So she was born 3 days later.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was she early?
Yes. I had thought I was about 26 weeks pregnant, and it turns out I was 36 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So she was ready.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, so I got clean on September 15th of 2021, and I haven't touched a drug since.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah. And so so when Grace was born, she was born emergency C-section, and because when I got there, they didn't know anything about the baby.
Right.
And so she was a very sick baby when she was born. And it turns out that I had Joe had given me an STD. I had chlamydia.
Mm-hmm.
And so Grace had an infection in her liver from that chlamydia. And so she came out, she was a very sick baby. And that's a complete opposite from Daisy, And so I just had this moment seeing my baby in the NICU,
Mm-hmm.
from my actions, And so I made a promise to her that I would never pick up again, and that I would fight for her. And
so where's God in all
right
this?
Right there with me.
Did you recognize that?
Yes, 100%. I remember I was in my hospital room, and the song "Sea of Victory"?
I don't.
So there's a song called "Sea of Victory," and I had played it, and it says, though the weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. And it's so true, because I felt like that addiction was like this weapon that was sent to me, but it's not going to prosper. And I just knew that I had to fight for my children. And so like Grace gave me this hope, and like I named her Grace because I didn't deserve her. I didn't deserve a second chance, but God gave me that second chance, and I knew that he was with me in it. So yeah, definitely.
So Grace is born, she's sick. And how does DSS respond to that?
So, obviously I was at Serenity Place. So she was in the NICU for an additional month. And she just miraculously healed. I mean, it was day after day. She was just getting better and better. The prayers were working. When she was first born, they were saying that she wasn't gonna make it, and then it was like day 3, she's off the CPAP, getting better. But DSS, they at first it seemed like they might have let her come to Serenity Place with me, because that's what that program is. But when she was getting released from the NICU, I had did the exiting class for her to come home with me to Serenity Place. But that day when she was supposed to come home, the DSS met me at the hospital with an ex parte order to take her into foster care. And I was only a month clean at the time, and I had to humble myself and accept that.
Sure.
Because at the time, I needed to show them that I was going to take my recovery seriously and be able to prove to them that I was going to stay clean.
So, we've mentioned it a bunch of times. What is Serenity Place? I know what it is, but our listeners probably don't.
Yeah, so Serenity Place is it's a 90-day program for, you can go there. It's for women and children, so you can have a child under the age of 5, and it's also for pregnant mothers. So it's an addiction treatment center. So it's a 90-day program where you can actually live with your child, and it's intensive. So you do classes all day long, where they're actually doing treatment on your, group peer support, different things like that. And they're actually teaching you skills, how to basically live sober. Right. And you have your own room with your child. And then after you complete the 90-day program, there is the outpatient part where you can live on campus in a villa. Okay,
so you go back to Serenity Place. They let you stay.
Yes.
Even though now you're not pregnant and don't have a child with you.
Yeah.
Are you still communicating with Daisy's foster parents?
So at this point, Daisy's foster mom kind of says like she can't be emailing me that much. It's been now over a year of her emailing me once a week, and she just needs to kind of take a break. And so I get a little bit less emails at this point, but I'm still getting to see Daisy once a week, and I start to get to see Grace once a week still. Sibling visits.
Right.
But I'm clean. I'm living at Serenity Place, and I'm seeing my girls once a week.
And they're with different foster families.
Different foster families.
That are friends. Okay, so the girls are getting to see each other more frequently because of the relationship that these two foster families have, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but you're doubling down on your recovery at Serenity Place.
Yeah, and I'm on a mission at this point. At this point, I'm like, I'm going all in. I'm getting both my girls back. I don't care what I have to do. Like, I'm in this. I'm going to get both my kids back. And Serenity Place is with me on this. Like, I've got my counselors. We're like, I'm going to do this program. I'm going to do this thing. And I'm going to get my kids back.
Okay. So you're committed to your recovery. Where is Jesus in this whole thing?
So, God's really working on my heart through all of this. I mean, I've been in my Bible praying. I surrendered my life back to Christ. I got baptized. I went to I went to this concert with an artist that I really love. It's called Kingdom Music, and they were baptizing people there, and I just gave my life back over to Christ. And so, I mean, very close to me through all of this. I mean, I've been on my knees praying every single night, crying out to God to help me through this. And so, very present with me, and still to this day.
What about Joe?
So Joe, I've basically cut him off completely. He ended up going to jail through this. So he was in jail, and I've basically cut him off completely at this point in time. Yeah.
So, and you're not keeping up with him? You don't know what's going on with his life?
No. And he didn't care to meet Grace or anything. Yeah.
So you eventually graduate Serenity Place?
Mm-hmm.
And where do you go from there? How does DSS respond to that?
So once I graduated Serenity Place, I went to go live in the Lotus Villas in the back. And not DSS, but Serenity Place actually even gave me my own separate room for the girls to have, that I could have set up for them. So DSS could come and see that I had a place for them.
Sure.
I was able to get a job. So I got a great job. I got a car. I'm doing my meetings. I'm, doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm just, showing them my weekly drug screens, everything that I'm supposed to be doing. But DSS at this point is still wanting to terminate my parental rights for both kids.
Okay.
It's like they didn't trust me. And I think that at this point they're looking at it like I'm in this safe bubble at Serenity Place. What is Gina going to do once she's outside this safe bubble? And so that was really hard for me, because I was here showing them like, hey, I want my children. I want to do what's right for them. But like, it was like this constant battle against me. But I knew in my heart, I was like, knew God wasn't going to leave me in this, like
Sure.
I knew I was where he sent me to go. So it was like, I was kind of like in this battle of like, it felt really unfair, and also being in a program where you're supposed to have your kids with you and not have them with you,
Right.
So that was hard.
So you're finding all this out from DSS through court visits, time in front of the judge.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're going to court, what's that experience like? Is it like helpful? Do you feel like you get more information from the state when you go, or is it just something that creates tremendous anxiety?
Well, I mean, it was more so like they did actually put me in jail again. I got arrested again for Grace testing positive. So that happened, and I was clean. I went to jail, had to deal with that while I was clean, which is okay. I did just want to mention that I completed PTI. So my charges were dismissed and pardoned. Lord. So, but yeah.
Pretrial intervention for people who don't know what that means. That means that the record's clean.
Yes. But yeah, so I think that just with talking with my attorney and everything, it just is like, I was kind of felt like I was backed into a corner, because it was like, what more can I do to show these people? It's like, I felt like I was at their mercy, and I would pray. I'm like, Lord, you have the final say, God, speak to these people, be in these conversations with these people and speak to their hearts, because I can't, it's like, it's almost like your children are at the mercy of people that, and so it's like, I can take so much responsibility. It's like, I did do these things, but I'm not doing them now. Like, what else can I do? So it's like, I felt like kind of helpless,
Yeah. And to be fair, those of us in recovery, we want the change now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we want people to believe us on our merits after we've been sober for 15 minutes.
Right.
And think everybody should give us what we deserve.
Yeah.
And also to be fair to DSS,
Yeah.
they're trying their best to love your children.
Yeah. And keep
right?
them safe.
And keep them safe.
Yes.
And so the hard part is what they require is time and distance, which means you have to be patient.
Right. And that's something that the Lord really had just given me, just that patience and just that one day at a time. Like, that's what I told myself, just one day at a time. You know, sometimes the only thing you can do is stay clean.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was like, on the days where I didn't see them, I went to work. I went to a meeting. And that's all I could do. So
when do things shift in the kind of legal relationship with Daisy?
Yeah. So I had a conversation with my guardian ad litem who said that the foster family that had Daisy, you know, they've had her since she was 3 weeks old. And as a mom, I kind of always had this in my heart that I knew that Heather, the one who's been caring for my daughter, obviously must love her as much as I love her. And I wanted to honor that because basically the guardian ad litem came to me and said that this foster family has a desire to adopt Daisy. Like, how do you feel about that? Like, and in terms of grace, like, and this was the first time this had been presented to me. And it just got me thinking, like, and praying, like, you know, like, as far as this family goes and for Daisy, like, to take her out of this home that is basically all that she knows. Like, she knows I'm her mom. Like, when we visit, she hugs me and she loves me and we spend time together. But when we leave that visit, she goes home and that's her home and that's her family. So to take her from that, like, that started to shift for me. Like, I started to think about it in a way of what was best for Daisy and not so much of what I wanted. And so it came down to it's almost, I don't want to call it like a Sophie's choice, but like, it kind of was like a Sophie's choice for me. Like, I had to come down to this place of like deciding that Daisy was better off staying with them. And that was going to be better off for her life than her coming home with me.
So there's this story in the Old Testament where these two mothers are fighting over this baby. Do you know what story I'm talking about? And so the people come to Solomon and they say, these two mothers are fighting over this baby. And you need to decide who's the mother. And so Solomon says, cut the baby in half. Give half to each mother. And one of the mothers says, no. Let the other lady have her. Don't cut the baby in half. And the other mother says, cut the baby in half if you want. I'll take my half. And so Solomon knows that the real mother is the one who's willing to sacrifice the baby for what's best for the baby. And so I can't imagine making the decision that you made in that moment, but it just emphasizes the heart, the mother's heart that God put deep within you. I cannot imagine, can't fathom making that decision, especially sober, working with everything that you can to be the best person that you can be. And then the Lord shows you that the best thing for Daisy is to let her go. Yeah. That's amazing, Gina. So you make that decision. And what does life look like post that decision?
Yeah. So everything just started to kind of happen all at once. So once I made that decision, in court that day, I got to meet Heather for the first time, and we hugged in the courtroom, and she just hugged me and said thank you. And it's like I could feel in that hug just such joy. It's like I had this pain, but she just had such joy and this release of just joy. Like, I knew I made the right decision, you know, like God put that on my heart. Just surrender her, you know, like you're doing, like God was like, just trust me. And also when I chose to have my, basically for Daisy to be adopted, I didn't mean that Grace was coming home that day.
Right.
They gave me 3 more months to show that I could get stable housing.
Sure.
And, it wasn't that, okay, sign Daisy over and you get Grace. It wasn't that. I still had more time.
Sure.
Which felt so defeating. It felt like I was giving up, but I wasn't getting anything, you know? And so, yeah, that was hard. But I had a visit with Grace like 3 days later, and the caseworker came up to me and she was like, so the foster mom, Evelyn, wants to meet up with you in the park and wants your number. And I was like, what? I was like, what, really? She was like, yeah, she wants to meet you in the park. And I was like, okay, I would love to. So from there with Grace, everything just happened all at once. So DSS just saw, I think it just kind of changed everything. Like they just saw how much I really truly love my children.
Yeah.
And they took me seriously, finally. And from there, I started to build a relationship with Evelyn and Rip. And I started to have unsupervised visits with Grace, which turned into overnights. And yeah, so everything just really started to grow, and I was able to just build that trust with it.
Have you and Evelyn talked about what changed in her heart for her to reach out like that?
Yeah, so she just basically the way that she describes it to me is like that moment in court when basically we went in there and they thought we were going to have a TPR trial, which is termination of parental rights. And so when the lawyer stood up and is like, the mother signed over the child for adoption, it just changed everyone's hearts in the room, you know? So like that just shifted for them, that they wanted to help me to be reunited with Grace.
So your relationship with Grace just kind of shoots like a rocket, right? Like you're able to spend more time with her. You're able to spend overnights with her. How is your relationship with Evelyn developing simultaneously?
Right. So Evelyn definitely has, even now, has started to become more of like a kind of like a mom figure for me that I've never really had, which is great because I'm able to, even then, I'm able to like call her for advice about Grace, like if I needed, because keep in mind, she had been caring for my daughter since she was an infant. So I needed her to walk alongside me with that reunification process of like, okay, if Grace is going to come home with me, I need someone to help walk alongside me to like, okay, what is she like? What does she doesn't like? What is her routine like? So she was able to basically walk alongside me in that process, you know, like, and we were able to help each other and like comfort each other because it was hard for her to send her home. And
so I think we jumped over an important point. What happens in June of 2022? Oh,
in June of 2022, I got full custody back of Grace.
You got full custody back of Grace. So, and how did Evelyn play a part in that?
So Evelyn, was there the whole way that she stood up in court for me and, and all the proceedings and everything. So that was, they just have just like stood by me as family, which has been fantastic. And, another thing too is like just that, helping us to foster our relationship, me and Grace. I think that was a big part of it. Like made the transition for Grace coming home so smooth. And so that played a huge part in it. And they even helped me move. Like, so I moved from the Lotus Villa at Serenity Place to an apartment at Front Porch Housing. And so, I mean, Rip and Evelyn, they even helped me move. Like, they just have been amazing. So
for our listeners, Front Porch Housing is the housing development operated by Grace Church.
Yes.
It is the former student housing for Greenville Tech, and they're beautiful apartments. And so that's where you and Grace live today.
Yes.
What else does life look like today?
Yeah. So life today, I just have a completely transformed life. Like I said, like you were saying, I live over there, and I have my own car. I work at a flower shop, which I love. So I work full time, and I meet with my sponsor once a week. I have a great sponsor. Her name's Katrika, and we're deep in the Bible. She pushes me to be, in the Word, and that's great. And I go to church. I'm in a 12-step study.
All good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask kind of like 3 just kind of follow-up questions, and we're getting towards the end, and you've done great. What does your relationship with Daisy look like, if anything?
So right now, my relationship with Daisy, ever since, that day in court, we had a goodbye visit. So I was able to kind of give her a box of special mementos of things from her birth and things that I'd like for her to have someday. And me and Heather still are in contact over email. So I get pictures of her every once in a while, which is fantastic. But as of right now, I'm just praying about it, that maybe someday we'll be reunited again, or somehow we'll be reconnected. And I'm hopeful for that. But I will say, that I went from seeing her once a week to not seeing her at all. And then all of a sudden into being a mother. So now I'm a mother. I'm Grace's mom. And then the reality of my child's been adopted has set in. And so that's something that I'm dealing with. I'm in therapy. So there's grief attached to that.
Whatever happened, somebody's going to ask, so I have to ask the question. Whatever happened to Joe?
Oh, yeah. So in October, Joe overdosed. And so he suffered from a traumatic brain injury.
Right.
And he's still alive. So he's still alive. He was in a vegetative state. And his family's keeping him alive like that. So I don't know what God's going to do. But it's tragic. Yeah. Tragic. He was once one of my best friends. So
sure.
It's hard, and I mean, father to my children, and so I pray for him.
And how is Grace today?
Grace is precious. She is the sweetest.
When we get done, I want to see a picture.
Okay, I'll show you.
Okay.
She is precious. She is happy. She is my little best friend. So she does have some delays, from she had a rough start. She has some delays, but she's in therapy, and she's going to be started in the Meyer Center, which is a special school, in August, which we're really excited about. But I just love being her mom. I mean, we go to the park. She loves to walk in her stroller. She loves to play peekaboo and eat. She loves to eat.
Don't we all?
Yeah. But yeah, she's just my whole world, and I'm just so thankful to be her mom.
So what a story of God's grace, right? So there are people out there that, because of different life choices, have not experienced the depth of God's grace in their own life. What a fitting name that you named your daughter, right? So what would you tell someone who says, God's grace isn't there, what would you say to them?
That's a good question. I would say, well, I've seen it in my own life.
Yeah.
And God's grace isn't there. That's, God's grace isn't there.
What would you say to somebody who says there's no hope? We'll change the question, maybe make it a little easier.
Well, have you ever been through a struggle, something that you struggle with? I would ask them that back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, through a struggle produces, like when you struggle through something, it produces perseverance, and then that produces character, and that produces hope, okay? That's from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It's in Romans. Okay? So if there's no hope, like if you didn't go through things, and you wouldn't have hope to get through them, like there is hope. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So do you feel comfortable to close us in prayer, praying for maybe the other mothers that are out there struggling, trying to do what's right for their kids?
Certainly.
Let's do it.
I would love to. All right. Oh, dear Heavenly Father, I just want to come to you today and just say thank you. Thank you for being a good God and a loving God. And just ask that anyone out there today listening to this podcast, may you just open their ears to hear, God. Hear the message that you want them to hear. I just pray for any mother out there, the children, our families that may be able to receive the message that you need to work in their hearts. Because we know that you can break chains of addiction, Lord. And you can break generational traumas, God. In the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Gina, thank you for coming on and for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Goodbye, everybody.